The neon sign outside Merit Diner had been flickering for 6 weeks. Half the R in Merit had gone dark sometime in early spring, and the buzzing hum it made after sunset had become as much a part of the parking lot as the gravel and the dumpster out back. Nobody had gotten around to fixing it. Nobody, it seemed, was going to. Nathaniel Calloway noticed it the moment he pulled off the county highway just past 6 in the evening, tires crunching over loose stone, his old pickup truck rattling to a stop near the door. He sat for a second, looking up at the sign the way a man looks at something he built with his own hands a long time ago and hasn't seen in a while. He wasn't dressed like anyone important. Flannel shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, jeans worn soft at the knees, work boots that had seen better winters. He looked like a man who fixed things for a living. Because, in a sense, that's exactly what he was. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and griddle smoke. The dinner rush just beginning to build. A young manager named Brianna Foss stood behind the counter, sorting receipts with the harried efficiency of someone running short-staffed on a Friday. She glanced up when the bell over the door rang, gave Nathaniel the quick, practiced once over, every server learns to do, and pointed him toward a booth without much ceremony. Sit anywhere, hon. Menus are on the table. Nathaniel nodded and took a booth by the window, the kind with cracked red vinyl, and a napkin dispenser that had clearly been refilled 1,000 times by 1,000 tired hands. He ordered coffee and the meatloaf special, and while he waited, he watched the sign outside through the glass, still buzzing, still half dark, blinking its broken rhythm into the coming dusk. "Somebody call about the sign yet?" he asked, when Brianna came back to refill his coffee. She let out a short, tired laugh. "Called corporate twice. They said it's on a list." "Everything's always on a list." She topped off his mug. "Between you and me, half this place is held together with duct tape and prayer. Corporate doesn't send anybody out here anymore. I don't think they even remember this location exists." "Mind if I take a look at it?" Nathaniel asked. "I've got tools in my truck." Brianna blinked at him, the kind of pause that wasn't rude exactly, just surprised. "You an electrician, or something?" "Something like that," Nathaniel said, and left it there. She shrugged, the shrug of someone who had long since stopped expecting much from strangers, or from corporate. "Either one. Knock yourself out. Just don't electrocute yourself on my shift. I've got enough paperwork today." He worked on the sign for the better part of an hour. Ladder braced against the brick, toolbox open on the gravel below, headlamp clipped to his cap as the sky went from orange to indigo. A few of the kitchen staff wandered out on their smoke breaks to watch, murmuring to each other in the low, curious way people talk about something they don't quite understand. "You believe this guy?" said Trevor, the line cook, around 19 years old, with a cigarette tucked behind one ear. He wasn't supposed to have. Random dude just decides to fix corporate sign for free on a Friday night. "Maybe he's got nothing better to do," said another cook, laughing. "Maybe he just needed something to feel useful," Trevor said, not unkindly, just with the easy dismissiveness of someone who'd never once considered that the man on the ladder might know more about the building than any of them did. Brianna watched from the doorway a while, arms crossed against the evening chill, half amused, half something else she couldn't quite name. There was something in the way the stranger worked, unhurried, precise, like a man who had done this exact task 100 times before and took a quiet satisfaction in doing it right. At 8:15, the sign buzzed once, flickered, and came back on hold. Merit Diner, every letter lit clean and steady against the darkening sky, red neon glowing the way it must have glowed the day it was first installed. A small, unexpected cheer went up from the smoke break crowd. Trevor whistled. Brianna actually smiled, a real one. Nathaniel climbed down, folded his ladder, and wiped his hands on a rag from his back pocket. "Ballast was shot," he said simply. "Had a spare in my truck. Lucky guess." "Let me comp your dinner at least," Brianna said. "Corporate's not gonna pay you, but I can at least feed you." "Wasn't looking for anything," Nathaniel said. "Sign like that's been part of this town longer than most of the people in it. Didn't feel right, watching it die a little more every night. He paid for his meal in full, despite her protest, left a tip that made Brianna's eyebrows lift, and drove off into the dark without leaving so much as a business card. 3 weeks later, a memo went out to every Merritt Diner location in the state. A corporate site visit was scheduled. Unannounced dates. Standard operating procedure review. Part of the quarterly evaluation cycle that determined bonuses, staffing budgets, and for underperforming locations sometimes closures. Brianna had been managing the Route 9 location for 2 years, watching it slowly starve of investment while corporate poured money into flashier stores in the city. She braced for the worst, the way she braced for most things, now quietly, without much hope, doing her best with what little she had. The morning of the visit, a black sedan pulled into the gravel lot at 8 sharp. Brianna smoothed her apron, gathered her staff, Trevor included, cigarettes safely absent from behind his ear for once, and stood ready by the counter, the way the training manual said to. 2 people got out of the car. One was a regional director named Patricia Voss, sharp-suited, clipboard in hand, the kind of corporate presence that made servers straighten their spines on instinct. The other was a man in a plain gray jacket, unremarkable at first glance, until Brianna's stomach dropped somewhere around her shoes. It was him, the man from the ladder. "Miss Foss," Patricia said, extending a hand. "All business. I don't believe you formally met our founder. This is Nathaniel Calloway." The words landed in the room like a dropped plate. Brianna felt her face go through several expressions in quick succession: confusion, disbelief, the beginning of a blush she couldn't stop. Behind her, she heard Trevor mutter something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like a curse word he definitely wasn't supposed to say in front of a regional director. "Founder," Brianna repeated, mostly to herself, as in I opened the first Merritt Diner in 1994, with $11,000 and a second-hand grill. Nathaniel said, a faint, familiar smile at the corner of his mouth. "As in, I still hold 62% of the parent company. As in, I've been doing quarterly walkthroughs, unannounced, in plain clothes, for about 8 years now, because paperwork tells you what a location looks like on a spreadsheet, and a broken sign tells you what it looks like at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, when nobody thinks anyone's watching." Trevor, to his credit, looked like he wanted the tile floor to open up and swallow him whole. "You let me call you random dude," he said, mostly under his breath, mortified. "You weren't wrong," Nathaniel said. "I was pretty random that night. Just wanted a meatloaf special and a working sign." Patricia cleared her throat, clipboard still in hand, though it was clear the formal inspection had quietly become something else entirely. "Mr. Calloway asked specifically that this location be added to the visit schedule," she said. "He mentioned an encounter a few weeks back." "You fixed corporate sign," Brianna said slowly, still working through it, "and you didn't say a single word." "I told you the truth," Nathaniel said. "I said I was something like an electrician." Man's allowed to keep a few details to himself over coffee. He walked the floor with Patricia for the next hour, the way he did at every visit, checking the walk-in cooler, the fryer maintenance logs, the state of the booths, the condition of the restrooms. But this time, he did it differently than the checklist required. He asked Brianna about the staffing budget. She'd been begging corporate to increase for a year. He asked Trevor how long he'd worked there and whether he had any interest in a shift lead position. He asked about the duct-taped freezer handle, the ancient water heater, the roof leak over booth 6 that had been patched with a tarp since February. By the time he left, Patricia's clipboard was full of notes that hadn't been there that morning. Approvals, not evaluations. A new equipment budget, a repair crew scheduled for the following week, a modest raise recommended for the manager who'd kept a crumbling location running on sheer will for 2 years without once asking for help. She didn't think she'd get. Before he climbed back into the black sedan, Nathaniel paused at the door and looked back at the sign one more time, glowing clean and steady over the gravel lot in the midday sun. "You did good keeping this place standing," he told Brianna. I don't forget that kind of thing. Corporate's got a way of losing track of the people actually doing the work. I try not to. Brianna, for the first time in longer than she could remember, didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and shook his hand and watched the car pull back out onto the county highway. That night, after close, she stood alone in the empty parking lot for a moment. The way she had the night, the sign came back to life. It buzzed once, steady now, no flicker at all. Every letter of Merit Diner burned bright red against the dark, exactly the way it must have looked the very first night, decades ago, when a younger version of the same quiet man had switched it on for the first time and believed, against every reasonable odds, that something small and stubborn could last. She thought about Trevor's joke. Maybe he just needed something to feel useful, and found, standing there in the cooling night air, that it hadn't been so far from the truth after all, just not in the way any of them had meant it. Some men build empires and never once climb the ladder themselves again. Nathaniel Calloway had built his with his own hands, and even now, 3 decades and hundreds of locations later, some quiet part of him still needed to climb it every so often, just to make sure the light stayed on for the people underneath it.